Parents, what's the fastest your kid has gotten instant karma? My 12-year-old son Chad has been going through this phase where he thinks he's too cool to listen to any safety rules, and yesterday I witnessed the most perfectly timed instant karma in parenting history. We were at his little league game, and Chad was being his usual rebellious self, ignoring every instruction I gave him. He kept wandering off, climbing on things he shouldn't, and generally acting like rules were just suggestions for other people. During the 7th inning stretch, I told him, "Chad, stay right here by the dugout while I go grab us some snacks from the concession stand." And he rolled his eyes and said, "Whatever, Dad, I'm not a baby, I can take care of myself." I literally turned around for maybe 10 seconds to buy hot dog when I heard this loud crack sound, followed by the most pathetic ow cry I've ever heard from a human being. I spun around to see Chad flat on his back on the ground, holding his forehead with both hands, and there's Jimmy Simon standing over him with a baseball bat looking absolutely horrified. Apparently, the second I walked away, Chad decided he was going to show off for some girls from his class by doing cool tricks near the batting cage where kids were taking practice swings. Chad thought it would be hilarious to sneak up behind Jimmy and yell, "Boo!" right as Jimmy was mid-swing trying to scare him. But Jimmy was in the middle of a full baseball swing and couldn't stop the bat in time. The bat caught Chad right across the forehead with a sound like someone hitting a watermelon with a wooden spoon, and Chad went down like he'd been struck by lightning. Jimmy was crying harder than Chad at this point, screaming, "I'm so sorry, I didn't see him, I was just practicing my swing," while Chad was rolling around on the ground, moaning about how his brain was broken. All the other kids were standing around in a circle, staring like they'd just witnessed the most epic fail in Little League history. And Chad's friend Darkus said, "Dude, you just got absolutely demolished by a baseball bat." I ran over expecting to find Chad seriously injured, but when I checked his forehead, there was just a small red mark and a tiny bump. No blood, no real damage, just wounded pride and a headache. Chad looked up at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Dad, I think I have a concussion." So I said, "Chad, you barely have a bruise, you'll live." But he insisted on being dramatic about it. He spent the next 20 minutes lying on the ground, claiming he couldn't remember his own name, even though 5 minutes earlier he'd been perfectly fine, and trying to get the other kids to sign his injury like it was a cast. The best part was when Chad tried to milk his injury for sympathy by telling everyone how he'd been brutally attacked with a deadly weapon. But all the kids who witnessed it just laughed and said, "You literally ran into a baseball bat." His friend Depp said, "Chad, you literally scared Jimmy on purpose. While he was swinging, everyone saw you do it." And Chad got defensive. "That's not the point, I could have died." I finally had to tell Chad, "Look, kiddo, you ignored my instructions, wandered into the batting cage, and tried to scare someone who was holding a baseball bat. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" Chad sat there for a minute, processing this, then said, "I thought it would be funny." And I replied, "Well, congratulations. It was hilarious, just not for you." The other parents were trying not to laugh, but I could see them all exchanging looks like they just watched the perfect example of natural consequences in action. On the drive home, Chad was still complaining about his serious head trauma. So I said, "Chad, you got bonked by a baseball bat because you ignored safety rules and tried to scare someone who was mid-swing. This is called learning the hard way." He was quiet for a few minutes, then said, "Dad, can we not tell Mom about this?" And I said, "Oh, honey, your mother is definitely hearing about the time you got knocked down by a baseball bat because you thought it would be funny to jump scare someone." Chad groaned and said, "He's going to make fun of me forever." And I said, "Probably, but maybe next time you'll listen when I tell you to stay put and follow safety rules."